Reveal season is almost over for the Rise of the Underworlds expansion, but it seems like Riot may have been saving the best for last. Or if not the best, at least some bangers. We only got 4 cards today, but there are some very good ones in this bunch. So we're going to jump right in and start with Time Winder. This is a 2-cost fast spell from Piltover and Zaun. All of the reveals today are from P and Z. And it says to play, discard 1. But you deal 1 to an enemy or the enemy nexus, then deal 1 to another. So basically, this is Static Shock, but instead of drawing a card, you discard a card. But for that trade-off, you get a cost reduction of 2. It literally cuts the cost in half. I really like this card. First of all, in Piltover and Zaun, discarding something isn't necessarily a huge drawback, at least not like it would be in other regions. And while I don't think this is going to crack in large numbers anyway, the discard aggro lineup, because I think for the most part in that you're still going to want to run Get Excited for the big hits, but maybe this ends up being like a one of or a tech choice. But even in those instances where you're not considering it for discard aggro, your more controlling or mid-rangey versions of Piltover and Zaun decks usually have some sort of card creation or card generation, allowing you to still be able to have stuff to pitch. Like if you're playing Zoe Vi and it's that Ruben's Zoo, that Ruben's pile list, for example, you might have Zoe making cards, you're invoking, you've got Ballistic Bot making ignitions, and you're going to have something to pitch. But you get the same effect of a Static Shock for half the cost. Now again, Static Shock, that draw a card is very important, and for certain controlling archetypes, I think that is still appealing, and I think that you might even see Time Winder and Static Shock run in the same decks because there are benefits to both. But 2 mana is a very big deal. There was a time when Make It Rain was 2 mana. Now I get it, Make It Rain was 3 damage across 3 things. This is only 2, but it was still kind of a terror in the format, and it was not uncommon to play Make It Rain when it could only hit 2 things to begin with. So I really do feel like Time Winder will end up seeing some play. And if you're playing against Piltover and Zaun and you're an aggro player, you're just going to learn to hate them having 2 mana open. You've already been conditioned to play around Mystic Shots, and now you got to worry about Time Winder on top of it. Oh, and now at 4, before it used to be like, all right, maybe they have Static Shock, but now it's, you know, do they have Static Shock? Do they have 2 Time Winders? Do they have 2 Mystic Shots? Is it Mystic Shot and Time Winder? This is just a great card. Obviously, because it targets 2 things, that is also beautiful for Ezreal. The more multi-target spells you can jam into an Ezreal list, the better off you will be. And so, yes, I've got a lot of nice things to say about this card, and I think it will find a home one way or the other. Next up, we have Drop Border. This is a 1-cost 1/3, but it says if you see me in a prediction, summon me. And I think this is cheeky. I don't know if it's actually going to be good enough to run in a prediction deck yet. I think that we're going to have to wait and see what Ekko does, because if Drop Border ends up being key to Ekko's level up, then maybe you have to include it. I'm just thinking out loud here, right? Maybe Ekko's level up is, you know, triggering a certain number of things during your predict. And so maybe Ekko is the champion where you start running Kahiri and Hexite and Drop Border and all of those things so that you can get those triggers. I don't know. I don't think that's the case though. But that being said, free value is always the right value. Anytime you can get something for free, that's great. But Drop Border is not the kind of card you want to draw. And therein lies the problem. It's not a very impressive 1-drop. The 3 health is nice as far as blocking goes. I mean, we've already kind of seen that with Dragon Chow. And obviously having more than 0 attack is nice, but it doesn't have the same utility that Dragon Chow does, where you're specifically also buffing another unit. It draws another card when it dies. It's helping you level up your Shyvana. Like Dragon Chow does a lot. And this is maybe free value, and it's still only a 1/3. So I don't know. I just feel like every time I actually draw this card, I'm not going to be happy about it. And further, here's the other thing, right? If I'm playing Predict, chances are I'm looking for very specific things. And if drop border is in there, and yes, I get to summon it for free, but now like I've pulled a drop border. That could have been instead just better cards that I was hoping to draw from my predict. So I don't know that a vanilla 1/3, even if it sometimes is played for free, is going to be good enough to consider playing. I love the flavor. I think it's a really cool mechanic, and I will probably test it, but my gut tells me that I don't think it's the sort of thing I'm going to be happy about enough. I could be wrong. It's entirely possible that drop border is necessary just to survive certain aggro matchups. I will say the positive here is that if you are playing a, you know, Zilean Ekko, which we assume is what the archetype is going to be, if you're playing that archetype and on round 1, you know, you Ancient Preparations and you also get a drop border out of it to start blocking, then that's kind of nice because the preparations clockling doesn't kick in for a couple of rounds. And then if on round 2 you Zilean and you also hit a drop border, then now you've got, you know, a 1/3, a 1/3, and a 1/4 to help block against aggressive strategies, and maybe that is enough. But it can't block fearsome, and it's got some other drawbacks. So I don't know. I think it's going to depend on the meta and kind of depend on what that deck archetype looks like overall. I do see the positives. I just know that it's the kind of card that if I draw it naturally, I'm going to be angry. You just want to see it. It doesn't even have the potential upside of a Kahiri. You just don't ever want to draw drop border is the problem. Maybe if you're running a number of cards that shuffle stuff from your hand back into your deck. So maybe in like a weird Twisted Fate list where you're doing a lot of both predicting and drawing, and you can use cards like pick a card to shuffle it back. Maybe that's the right archetype for it. I don't know. I just know that I don't want to draw it naturally. Speaking of predict and drawing, next up we have Time Trick. This is a 2-cost burst spell that says predict, then draw 1. And I love this card. It is so simple and so amazing. Yes, you're paying 2 to draw 1, but it's 2 at burst speed, and you get to make a choice. And so when it comes to panic situations where you're trying to draw a very specific response or answer, and in Piltover and Zaun as an archetype, that's pretty common at times. You run a lot of fast speed spells to be reactive, you know, when you're trying to find that mystic shot, or you need to find that get excited, whatever the case may be. This card is really good at that because you get to predict. So you are going to be presented with some choices, and then you can pick the best one and draw it. Or I believe you should still be able to skip the predict and then just draw something else as well. So I love the utility of this. This is not a raw numbers value card, right? This is not, you know, pay 2 to draw 2. This is not even Stalking Shadows. And I know that's probably the best comparison because that's a card where you are also presented choices and then you still get 2 cards out of it, right? Usually your rule of thumb for drawing in this game is you've got to either have like a good effect and then it draws, so like Static Shock, or it needs to draw more than 1 card so that you are replenishing your hand size. This technically doesn't do those things, but this is as close to a tutor, which is Magic terminology. This is as close to demonic tutor as this game has ever seen, and that card in and of itself in Magic was historically very, very good, and all the tutor effects have been used and abused for a long time because they help with consistency. And so even if this is just a poor version of that effect, I think it's still good enough to see play. I'm very excited to play with this card and to try to break it, even beyond the archetype that wants to abuse predict. I mean, obviously predict is going to be something that is meant to be built around, whether it's with Zilean, we don't know what Ekko does, and we got the Hexite unit that was already revealed. But beyond even all of those things, I think that this card is potentially good enough to see play in other decks as well, specifically combo decks where you're trying to find certain pieces. This is a great card to help you with consistency. I love this card so much. But I don't want this video to be too long. So instead of gushing over Time Trick for like the next 10 minutes. Let's just move on, I guess. I want to say more, but let's just move on. All right, last card that was revealed is Practical Perfectionist. This is a 3-cost for 2, and on play, this predicts, but then you create 3 copies of the chosen card in your deck. I also love this card. I love this card for a number of reasons. Anytime that we can create multiple copies of something in your deck, I think I am a fan because you get to do wacky things, but also this is a really good stat line for a predict unit. It can still be Mystic Shot, right? It is just a 2 health unit. It doesn't have relevant keywords, but the 4 attack is nice. That means it can potentially trade up into other more expensive units, and it's got a great on play effect, and you're likely playing this in some sort of combo deck where the copy matters. So obviously you think about the Hexite Crystal. I keep mentioning it because that's going to be one of your obvious choices, or the Time Bombs from Zillion. In both of those instances, you play this, you predict. The Hexite in particular is great because not only are you going to get to draw your Hexite, but you're going to make more copies of them. So you just keep stuffing your deck full of bombs. But even outside of the intended use, much like Time Trick, I think this has other uses in other decks. For example, in the charity event, I was playing the Daring Poro Iceborne Legacy kind of meme deck that was performing much better than I thought it was going to. And, you know, I was playing some cards that are not very good, for example, but they make copies of things. I would totally run this card in that deck. In that deck, the key is to run as many cards that can potentially make Daring Poros as possible, and then you play Legacy on them and Poro Snacks, and then eventually you just always have a bunch of cheap elusives. And Practical Perfectionist is another great way to potentially keep shuffling more and more of them in your deck. And I also love that if you get your deck small enough, you can kind of create a loop of sorts where if your first Perfectionist finds the card that you want to make a bunch of, and then maybe your second one sees another Perfectionist, so you make more copies of Perfectionist, you can kind of go back and forth between the two and just keep looping it so that they are always taking up space in your deck so that you can keep doing it. There is certainly the possibility of just never decking and always having the exact cards that you want left in your deck. So I look forward to messing around with that as well. But I feel like I now want to see if I can make that Daring Poro deck work for real because of this card, because it's that neat. And again, obviously there's going to be some sort of predict, Time Bomb, Hexite. Again, we don't know what Ekko does, but we know all things are pointing toward that being an archetype, and I think this will absolutely fit in. So anyway, I dig it. I like a lot of the reveals today. Even Drop Border that I am the lowest on, I still see the potential where it could see play, but all of the other cards I think are very good. So this was a quality batch for only 4 cards, and I cannot wait to see what Ekko does. But that's it for the video. So if you made it this far, I appreciate you. Let me know what kind of combos you are dying to put together with these cards. Let me know what kind of archetypes you can't wait to play. Give me your early speculation as to what Ekko is going to do so we can all laugh at how wrong we are tomorrow. And yeah, but I love you. Thank you for watching. And until next time, may you walk on warm sands.